Justice January with Dr. Anne Klaeysen. Everyone is bye, Chip. See you later. Anne is leader here at the New York Society for Ethical Culture. She holds a Doctor of Ministry, degree in Pastoral Counseling from Hebrew Union College, as well as master's degrees in German from the State University of New York at Albany and Business Administration from New York University. Dr. Klaeysen is the Ethical Humanist Religious Life Advisor at Columbia University and Humanist Chaplain at NYU. She is also co-dean of the Humanist Institute and serves on the board of the Sunday Assembly NYC. Dr. Klaeysen participates in several interfaith social justice coalitions. One thing you may not know about Anne, besides being known for her talking, she has also always been a lovely singer. From singing as a child to joining her junior high choir, then a show chorus in high school, and singing groups in college, both in the United States and Germany. As an adult, she helped form the Brooklyn Women's Chorus in 1996 and recently sang at the cafe at Ethical, and she was dynamite. Whether it's a lullaby to a child or a protest song with the masses, Anne loves to raise her voice and sing. Please welcome Dr. Anne Klaeysen.
Thank you. Yeah, now I know why my daughter Emily was asking me those questions. Thank you. Good morning. I start with a poem, Crocus Prayer, and it's written by Kim Crawford. It takes courage to be crocus-minded. I'd rather wait until June, like wild roses, when the hazards of winter are safely behind and I'm expected and everything's ready for roses. But crocuses, highly irregular, knifing up through hard frozen ground and snow, sticking their necks out because they believe in spring and have something personal and emphatic to say about it. I'm not by nature crocus-minded. Even when I have studied the situation and know there are wrongs that need righting, affirmations that need stating, and know that my speaking out may offend, for it rocks the boat, well, I'd rather wait until June. Maybe later things will work themselves out and we won't have to make a big issue of it. Forgive me. Wrongs won't work themselves out. Injustices and inequalities and hurt don't just dissolve. Somebody has to stick their neck out. Somebody who cares enough to think through and work through hard ground because they believe and they have something personal and emphatic to say about it. Me? Crocus-minded? Could it be that there are things that need to be said and I need to say them? Dear universe, please grant me the courage you gave the crocus. I dedicate this morning's address to my dear friend and our beloved member, Pamela McGee, who was crocus-minded. She stuck her neck out and cared enough to think through and work through hard ground because she had something personal and emphatic to say about it. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'll talk about a working definition of justice and how it is at the core of our ethical mission and how we can put our ethics into action every day. I've researched reputable resources because I'm aware of my responsibility to you to be accurate. No alternative facts shall escape my lips. Yet I hear Pamela saying, "Come on, Anne. We all know what's right, don't we? We feel it in our bones. We hear it in our hearts. Hell, justice is music that we can sing and dance to. More importantly, we know injustice because it's mean. It sucks the life out of people when they are treated or treat others as less than, and it's up to all of us to stop it. I wonder every day why that isn't obvious to everyone. Why can't we all agree on what is just and fair? Which side, and these days it is clear that lines have been drawn, are we on? So let's define justice. It's a concern for peace and a genuine respect for people. Its synonyms are fairness and fair play. The Cambridge Dictionary calls it the condition of being morally correct or fair, and Merriam-Webster Dictionary says it's the quality of being just, impartial, or fair. The maintenance of or administration of what is just, especially by the impartial adjustment of conflicting claims or the assignment of merited rewards or punishments. There's an article by Wayne Pomerleau, a philosopher, called Western Theories of Justice, and it starts off saying, justice is one of the most important moral and political concepts. It comes from the Latin word jus, meaning right or law. It defines just person as one who typically does what is morally right and is disposed to giving everyone her or his due, offering the word again, fair, as a synonym. But philosophers like to get beyond the etymology and the dictionary definitions. They like to consider the nature of justice as both a moral virtue of character and a desirable quality of political society, as well as how it applies to ethical and social decision making. Philosophers today will look back at ancient Greece, Plato and Aristotle, medieval Christianity, St. Augustine and Aquinas, and they'll look to more modern times. They'll look at Hobbes and at Hume, at Immanuel Kant, who inspired our own founder, Felix Adler, and John Stuart Mill. Today we'll look at John Rawls to give us some notion of what justice means to us in a contemporary political society. We'll look at, philosophers will look at, I won't look at it today because I've made my decision which approach I'm taking. But there are different approaches towards that concept of justice. A libertarian perspective, a socialistic one, a humanitarian one, a globalist, a feminist one, a postmodern one. There are so many different ways, so many different approaches of looking at justice. But the one that I look at is the rights-based alternative. And this is one that we interpret justice as requiring respect for the dignity of all persons as free and equal, rational, moral agents. And this is the one that I've focused into today because I don't want to get lost in the weeds of all the different philosophical stances. Where I stand, and I believe most of us stand as well, is articulated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which you can find in the lobby of our meeting house. Rose Walker, who was a member who lived on this earth for 104 years, often told me that ethical culture is a religion for mature adults and its sacred text is the Declaration of Human Rights, which was proclaimed by the General Assembly on December 10th, 1948 as, quote, a common standard of achievements for all peoples and all nations, close quote. So that is where I ground my understanding of justice, in basic human rights. When and where human rights are violated, they must be defended. When and where they are absent, they must be established. Actions in support of human rights, to me, constitute justice. Let's just listen to a few words from the preamble of that declaration. It assumes in the whereases recognition of the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family. That is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. It also establishes that a disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. The highest aspiration. And it is aspirational, isn't it? The Declaration of Human Rights, right? It would be wonderful if our own country adhered to that universal declaration. Here are just a few of the 30 rights, just a few of them, to bring home the fact that we have a great deal of work ahead of us, not only in Justice January, but throughout the year. Article 3, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. Article 4, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Article 5, no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Number 6, everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. And 7, all are equal before the law and entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. Let's skip down now to the 20s, right? Article 23, everyone has the right to work. Everyone without discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work. 24, everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. Article 25, everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of herself and her family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, and other lack of livelihood due to circumstances beyond one's control. Article 26, and I'm so glad that Audrey spoke to this one and what she's going to be focusing on with the children in Justice January, and that's the right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. It shall be directed to the full development of the human personality and to the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. But here's the rub and the reality. Far too many people in powerful positions consider these not to be rights, but to be privileges. Privileges for the few, not rights for everyone. And they will spend obscene amounts of money to maintain their vision of the world. The lines have been drawn. Which side are we on? I love a good whodunit. I just finished reading Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz, and it's a very satisfying puzzle within a puzzle, and it keeps me awake at night. And I love the whodunits where the culprits are handily dispatched by intelligent detectives. But real life isn't like that. The culprit isn't obvious or even culpable sometimes. There are extenuating circumstances and bad forensic science. Consider the Innocence Project. The Innocence Project, which has exonerated so very many people who in our courts of law, our courts of justice, have been found guilty and yet are not. There are also biases that will keep us from reaching justice. Langston Hughes wrote, "That justice is a blind goddess is a thing to which we blacks are wise. Her bandage hides two festering sores that once, perhaps, were eyes." And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." In his letter from the Birmingham jail, he quoted the Hebrew prophet Amos when he said, "Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." Let justice roll down. Well, have you heard that phrase lately in a tweet? James Comey. What an interesting man. I didn't realize he was a theologian. He only recently acknowledged that he has been tweeting under the name of a well-known theologian, Niebuhr. And so he tweeted on December 1st, but justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. And what was he responding to? He tweeted this shortly after ex-Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pled guilty to lying to FBI agents. And so the former FBI director took to Twitter to reference a biblical verse by Amos, the prophet. Well, all the prophets of the Hebrew Bible exhibit moral outrage. And a while back, you may recall that I taught a class on a humanist interpretation of the Bible, and we've spent some time with Amos because he is downright hopping mad. Prophets don't like to be called to be prophets. It's the last thing in the world they want to be because everyone hates them. No one wants to be told what to do and how to do it. But Amos, he just about had enough. So he was active in the 8th century BCE. And though he was from a southern Judean town called Tekoa, he preached his message of judgment and reform to the prosperous population in northern Israel, especially in Bethel and Samaria. Now, why was Amos so angry? And why did he speak in oracles and in metaphors? Well, throughout the text, he voices this prophetic rage against the injustices of the day. The entire book of Amos is given to denouncing the excesses of 8th century BCE Israeli life and reminding people of their true covenantal obligations. Those who are at ease in Zion and feel secure on Mount Samaria, who lie on beds of ivory and eat lambs from the flock, will be the first to go into exile. Yes, he did a lot of condemning also. Because they have forgotten the plight of the poor and mistaken religious observance and piety for moral responsibility. We need an Amos today. And you know what? We have them. We do. There are so many Amoses there, and they're active not only pouring into the streets, but also active on the internet. There are so many different ways that people are reaching out and calling to our attention the injustices of today. I wonder, back in the 8th century BCE, if there was the 0.01%. I imagine there was. And probably they lorded it over everybody then, just the way they do today. Let's look at education. Free education. Free education in New York City is in our public schools. But a good education is in a private school that charges $50,000 a year. And if you can afford that, then you will be part of the elite. You are part of the people in the 0.1% who will educate yourselves and your children very, very well to take on the challenges that you may face in this world. But those who don't have $50,000 a year and do not have the luck to win a scholarship will be in a public school that is now more segregated than it was in the 60s. There's an injustice to that, and we're called to pay attention and to bring attention to it. I've often talked with you about my adventures on Facebook, reconnecting with people I grew up with in the small village of Palmyra, New York, east of Rochester. And I am called what they consider a pejorative, a social justice warrior. Well, guess what? Palmyra is just east of Rochester on the Erie Canal, and one of my favorite Rochesterians is Frederick Douglass. My other favorite one is his friend Susan B. Anthony. And what Frederick Douglass said really can inspire us today, because not only was he obviously very alert to injustice, and he wrote, "Where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe." And what does he tell us to do? Agitate, agitate, agitate. That's what he tells us to do. And so that's what we're going to be doing in Justice January. We're going to be agitating a whole lot. So I refer you to your newsletter. Make sure that you all get a copy of the newsletter, and you will see right on the front page, Confronting Capitalism. And I'm very delighted that I will be presiding for the speaker that morning, Colleen Aaron, who's a friend of mine from the Long Island Society, and got her doctorate writing about Bernie Madoff. So she has a great deal to say about the injustices of capitalism. And then we see right below it, on January 30th, Just Leadership USA's campaign to close Rikers. I think in the first or second year, no, the first year that I was here, I gave a platform address about justice for juveniles. And the then president, Andrew Miller, came up to me and said, "We have to do something now." And so we did. And we started a conference. We brought people together from across the city, indeed across the state, to hold a series of conferences and workshops on justice for juveniles. And although we have a long way to go, Spofford was closed as a result of that. And many people who were involved in alternatives to incarceration and alternatives to detention for teenagers are now powerful people and decision makers in our government. So we also need to close Rikers for so many reasons, not the least is because it's a jail, not a prison, and people spend time there. Why? Because they can't raise bail money. It is essentially a debtor's prison. Read Charles Dickens, and you'll see that the debtor's prison then is pretty much what we have going on today. Then we can look at, see on page 3, what Audrey told us about, and that's the children. Justice January with our children. Keep looking, and you'll see that my colleague Richard Correll has been doing an ongoing class called Race, Systems, and Societies. It's a seminar, people read together, they learn together. Please make sure that you take part in that. And then we also have, I'm also very delighted, I'm going to be around a lot in Justice January, presiding for the American Indian Community House on January 21st, and their topic is Decolonizing New York. Taking a look at what the indigenous peoples here have to say about injustice. So that's what's happening. Also, the Women's March. And we are an organizing site for the Women's March, which will be on Saturday, January 20th. Rallying here, and I'll give you more details later. It will be on Central Park West and Columbus Circle. Other ethical societies are joining us, and we are partnering with the League of Women Voters. Thank you, Carol, for getting that partnership for us. This march is also being seen as an impeachment march. I'm sure you can understand why. So in conclusion, agitate, agitate, agitate. There are injustices in the world. We know them when we see them, and it is our moral obligation and responsibility to speak out, to stand up, to march, to take action. Closing words are another poem, Louisa Fletcher, and it's called The Land of Beginning Again. I wish that there were some wonderful place in the land of beginning again, where all our mistakes and all our heartaches and all of our poor, selfish grief could be dropped like a shabby old coat at the door and never put on again. I wish we could come on it all unaware, like the hunter who finds a lost trail. And I wish that the one whom our blindness had done the greatest injustice of all could be there at the gates, like an old friend that waits for the comrade he's gladdest to hail. We would find all the things we intended to do but forgot and remembered too late. Little praises unspoken, little promises broken, and all the 1,001 little duties neglected that might have perfected the day for one less fortunate. It wouldn't be possible not to be kind in the land of beginning again, and the ones we misjudged and the ones whom we grudged their moments of victory here would find in the grasp of our loving hand clasp more than penitent lips could explain. So I wish that there were some wonderful place called the land of beginning again, where all our mistakes and all our heartaches and all our poor selfish grief could be dropped like a shabby old coat at the door and never be put on again. Thank you, Pamela, my crocus-minded friend. Thank you for inspiring me and leading me and nudging me and kicking me in the butt sometimes. Thank you.